I'm Lenora Bresler. Welcome to the April 6, 2017 edition of the Bible Delight in the Details. I am sorry that I have been derelict in doing my Delight in the Details episodes for the last 3 days after telling you we were starting a series preparing us for Easter. I can just say I have such a hectic training schedule from morning till night that I have just not been able to do it. But I will try, I promise, from now to Easter to be better. We were talking about the Seder meal and how the Passover meal was the situation in which Christ instituted the Last Supper, communion, Eucharist. And so it is the best way for us to prepare for Easter since it was the way Christ prepared. Now, we know that the Passover was to remind the Jewish people about how God had reclaimed them, had saved them from the slavery in Egypt, which was a metaphor for the slavery of sin, and that Moses had brought them out, and it was to remind every generation about the saving grace of God. In fact, during the ceremony, and it is a ceremony, Seder means order, so there is almost a script to this, the people are told to say, God has brought us out. We did this, even though we know it was many, many generations before them that the actual people who were led out of Egypt experienced that miracle. Now, this is all important for the Christian, as we know, because Peter and Paul make no bones about the fact that Christ is our Passover lamb. He is the sacrifice by which we are saved and led out of sin. So, let's talk about the preparation. 4 days before Passover was known as the Selection Day. And every family in Israel, every Jew, wherever you were located, was to pick a lamb. It had to be a lamb without blemish, and it was a male lamb without blemish, and you were to keep that lamb with you literally in your household for those 4 days prior to killing it, so that you bonded with that lamb and that you recognized that was your lamb. And when that lamb died, on preparation day, the day before Passover was to begin, you would understand that they were dying in your place, that it was going to be their blood rather than yours that would be shed, but it would be shed as an atonement for you. It's very interesting that it came time on what we would call Maundy Thursday, the day before Passover. Remember, Jewish time, the day starts at sundown. So during Maundy Thursday, up until 6 o'clock, that was known as Preparation Day. Now, this was the day in which the Passover was prepared. The lamb would be killed, would be sacrificed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as part of the evening sacrifice that was done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the temple. But prior to that, during those 4 days when the lamb was, you were living with the lamb and all, there were elaborate cleanings of the houses. They were looking for yeast. They would turn out garments, looking for in any nook and cranny, looking for yeast, which represented sin. And it's interesting that as Christ is making his way to Jerusalem, and during that last week, while people were preparing by looking for these crumbs of yeast, which represented sin, Christ becomes much more aggressive in his denouncement of the hypocrisy, particularly of the Sadducees and the other religious leaders. And this is when he's saying to them, you are just like whitewashed burial tombs. You look good on the outside, but you're really writhing evil on the inside, because at the very time when they should have been looking to their lives to rid their lives of sin, as symbolically they were looking in their houses to rid the house of yeast, they were doing such evil and wicked things. And Christ had a lot to say about that. Now, on Preparation Day, the Gospels tell us that Christ chose Peter and John to go find a place where they would celebrate the Passover on what we would call Thursday night. but the Jews would have called the beginning of the Passover day. And that would have been a great honor to have been asked to do that. And so it might be very interesting. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how Peter might have been very surprised, therefore, having been given that responsibility, that he was not given the seat of honor at the Passover feast. John winds up sitting where we would expect him to, but not Peter. And that opens up a interesting dialogue where Christ talks specifically to Peter about how one should feel about his position. Join me tomorrow on more of the Bible, Delight in the Details. I'm Lenora Bresler. Have a great night.